Canada Post and the Workers' Union have reached tentative agreements and say they won't strike or lock out until a ratification vote occurs. The agreements are for urban and rural bargaining units. It includes increased wages, improved benefits, weekend parcel delivery, and job security for urban employees. A ratification vote will take place early next year. The union's executive is recommending that its members vote yes. With me now is business analyst Ian Lee. Nice to see you, Ian.
My pleasure, Caroline.
Well, wage hikes of 6.5% in the first year, 3% the year after that, and then tied to inflation in the subsequent years. Will that keep an effectively bankrupt company afloat?
No, it won't, but I don't want to sound like that I'm being negative on this. This is a good news story in the sense that it's going to bring back certainty for those reducing or diminishing number of businesses and consumers that still use the post office. That's good news. That shouldn't be trivialized because we've had massive uncertainty with the post office for the past year in terms of, are they on strike, are they not, and so forth. But then I turn to the question, will this address the serious structural issues underneath the hood? The fact that fewer and fewer and fewer people are writing letters. Year after year after year. Are we going to suddenly give up our cell phones and start writing letters again because they came to an agreement? Of course not. This is going to, ironically, although it will produce labor peace for the next 5 years, it's going to make the lack of competitiveness in parcels even greater because Canada Post is not competitive now with the private couriers. The wages, which I'm sure are deserved, are going to exacerbate the gap between Canada Post and the private courier companies.
Well, so
on the one hand, short run, good news. In the longer term, it doesn't solve the underlying structural problems.
Well, this is exactly it, Ian. I mean, anybody can look at their post box to say, sure, I might be receiving fewer letters today, but the number of parcels piling up at my door, especially during the holiday season, is greater than any year before. And really, Canada Post is not in on that market the way that private carriers are. How do they break into it then?
You're absolutely right. And the future is parcels. Let's be clear. I've been very clear because the data says that. Letters are going to vanish. Young people don't write letters. I get letters from elderly Canadians, and they're wonderful people. And they say, I still write letters. And I say, listen, talk to your grandchildren. They don't write you letters. They send you texts. They use social media. That's not coming back. It'll be gone in 5 to 10 years. But parcels are the future because e-commerce is growing at 9% a year, according to Stats Canada. So that's the good news. The bad news is that until they really restructure inside Canada Post to become much more dynamic, they're not going to bring back those customers that have deserted them to the private courier. So they've got a huge job ahead to become more dynamic and productive and competitive.
And let's talk about the corporate finances of Canada Post just for a second, because they have said they're experiencing record losses in the last quarter alone, $541 million in the first 9 months of 2025, more than $1 billion in losses. This doesn't look like a company that has that is solvent, first of all, and that necessarily has a financial future where it can be handing out wage increases. So how do you square that circle?
You're absolutely right. In fact, the CFO, the financial vice president, said that they burned up the money that they got, I believe in January, the $1 billion. They've used it up because they are losing money every minute of every day. So what that means, even more bluntly, is they're going to be back very shortly, maybe right after Christmas, maybe first week of January, to the government saying, hey, we need another $1 billion. And it might even be $1.5 billion because the losses I think the losses are actually higher. So Prime Minister Carney said only 3 months ago, we are not going to subsidize the post office $1 billion a year indefinitely into the future. So that suggests that sometime early in the new year, the government will announce its decision about the proposal for restructuring submitted by Canada Post, and it just seems inevitable that they're going to have to be very, very large cuts, reduction of mail from 5 days a week to maybe 2 or 3 days a week, end of door-to-door delivery, franchising of hundreds, if not thousands, of post offices and so forth, because they are still bleeding. They are hemorrhaging incredible amounts of money. So they're a long way away from where they have to be to become competitive and solvent, and they're not solvent right now.
And at least there is a piece of insurance, Ian, that there will not be a strike, nor will there be a lockout until that ratification vote. We hope early in the new year. So there is good news that there will be stability for the next while, but beyond that is anybody's guess.
You're absolutely right. And I want to celebrate and applaud Cup W, because Cup W, and I'll be very blunt, and I don't have any dog in this hunt. I don't consult anybody, but they have been adamant that they wouldn't compromise. They are finally, I think, understanding that the writing is on the wall, that the end is nigh. And I think that they should be applauded for finally becoming more, shall we say, rational and reasonable in recognizing that they had to make a series of compromises and get an agreement to produce that stability as a first step to try to bring back the business users of parcels to Canada Post.
Ian Lee, always appreciate your time.
Thanks very much, Carolyn. Thank you.